Welcome, my friends, to Pop Culture Fridays. I'm your host, as always, Troy. This week, creative thinking, find your inspiration. It's not necessarily just about artistic creation or the spark for whatever creative project you might be working on. It is about that, but it's also about finding those significant moments that you might not normally pay attention to in life that end up shaping your life in a significant way. Those things that we think of as small interactions at first, or small moments that end up not being small at all, whether we're aware of them or not. They can shape our lives in huge ways and start revolutions in our minds. And I want to illustrate this idea by telling you a story that happened to me. I went into Powell's books in Portland, Oregon, on Burnside in 12th or 10th or something, and randomly grabbed a book that forever changed my life. So, in order to tell this story, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to the 1870s. Stay with me here. 1870, the 16-year-old poet, the famous French poet Arthur Rimbaud, that many people believe was the father or pioneer of modern French poetry, quite an accolade. More astonishingly, he wrote all of his significant works, or most of the works in general, between the ages of 16 and 20. That's crazy. Anyway, here he is in France in 1870 to 74, writing all these significant works that would end up influencing me. Now, fun little side note here. When he was a little boy, he used to kind of be an artist. He would go around and write on walls in his little French town, "Shit on God." That takes a lot of balls in the 1870s, I think. But it's also kind of an interesting side note of him being like a street artist, a word street artist. Take that, Barbara Kruger, Jenny Holzer. Anyway, let's time travel from 1870 up to 2012. Portland, Oregon. There I am, dummy, me, walks into the store, and quick little side note, I used to be exclusively a composer, so I'd write things for string quartets, orchestra, whatever. I really wanted to write for operas. For some reason, I still do, kind of. And so when I would write for voice, I would always look for lyrics or whatever to set the music or the sounds to. And so that's what I was doing there, looking for poetry, looking for writing, anything that would inspire me. And I found something that would completely change my life. So there I am in Powell's, looking for writing or anything that I can connect with. And I see this little book in the Rimbaud section, teal colored, light teal cover. I grab it, and the first of three things, there are three things that are life-changing about this book. The first thing I noticed right away, there's an inscription on the inside. Now, we'll come back to the inscription at the end, but this is the kind of thing that I've found numerous times from buying used books at Powell's. One time I found in a Marcel Proust book, Remembrance of Things Past, somebody in San Diego in the 1960s had found an article in the paper about Marcel Proust, and they cut it out and stuffed it into the book. And I love that Powell's, when they sold this book to Powell's, they just kept it and put it in there. Beautiful thing. Anyway, there are three things that I basically want to talk about. One, the inscription, which I'll talk about at the end. And the other two things that were completely life-changing were two poems, Le Mal and Movement by Rimbaud, that changed everything for me. So I'm going to go through all three of those things. So the first thing I found was a poem called Le Mal. And besides being sort of moved by it and compelled to write a sound work based off of it for voice and two stringed instruments, the reason that it's significant is because that work was premiered at Someday Lounge in Portland, Oregon. Rest in peace, Someday Lounge. And the reason that it was significant was because it was sort of like, I'd had performances before, but this was like a really hip, kind of cool place. And it sort of, this might sound dumb to say, but it kind of pushed my confidence into a good zone. I felt like, maybe I can do something. I'm not sure what, but I started to feel like maybe I was moving in the right direction, or that people were interested and that they liked this work. It just to say that that's insignificant or that it doesn't matter is bullshit. It does matter. And this work made me feel like anything was possible. Not because of the work itself, but I mean like because of where it was premiered and how it was sort of received, and yes, the poem itself moved me, but the whole thing is like a packaged thing, right? You find some inspiration, you create something off of that, and then the finished product and sort of how it interacts with other people, it all matters. It all goes into this thing. And that's what Le Male is. It's the first thing that came from this book that really, or the second thing that really pushed me in like a positive direction. And one reason that I love this poem is that it's about war. There's a line in there about turning men into smoking, heaping piles, like trash. And it makes me think of all those great war documentaries where you see human bodies stacked on top of each other, like there's some sort of just pieces of trash or garbage. It's so sad. And I just felt like this poem said everything that you wanted to say, and it says something about posturing kings and queens and gods sitting on their thrones and not doing anything about it until afterwards when they want your tax money or they want your Sunday donations. So let me read the poem real quick, and then I'll play a clip of that performance, the premiere night, afterwards. While the red-stained mouths of machine guns ring across the infinite expanse of day, while red or green, before their posturing king, the massed battalions break and melt away. And while a monstrous frenzy runs a course that makes 1,000 men a smoking pile, poor fools, dead, in summer, in the grass, on nature's breast, who meant these men to smile. There is a God who smiles upon us through the gleam of gold, the incense-laden air, who drowses in a cloud of murmured prayer, and only wakes when weeping mothers bow themselves in anguish, wrapped in old black shawls, and their last small coin into his coffer falls. So as significant as Le Male was, the poem movement was even bigger, and here's why. At the time I was working on a piece for piano electronics based off of this poem, or just inspired by it, and I was working at the Portland Art Museum at the time, and somebody suggested that maybe I try putting my works as a sound installation into one of the galleries, which is what I did at the Portland Art Museum. They had like an employee art show, and I put this work, Endlessly Illuminated, which is inspired by this poem movement, into that work, and it forever changed the path of everything for me. This poem, this piece of writing, whatever you want to call it, is still one of my favorite things ever. It's so powerful. It's about colonization, I think, and about all these savages that got on boats and sailed across seas, like the Vikings or whatever. Just they didn't know what was on the other side of these big bodies of water, but all the destruction and the death and the connections and just the human curiosity that you're willing to sail across oceans to see, just to see what's out there. And then when you get there, what happens with those interactions and the things that changed because of it. These people, they were funded by kings and queens and rich people and churches. They couldn't just come back and go, yeah, I wrote a couple of poems about my experience. No, they wanted resources, man. They wanted things. They wanted gold. That's what they were searching for, and that's what this poem is about. How could you not write something based off of this poem? A winding movement on the slope besides the rapids of the river, the abyss at the stern, the swiftness of the incline, the overwhelming passage of the tide, with extraordinary lights and chemical wonders. Lead on the travelers through the windspouts of the valley and the whirlpool. These are the conquerors of the world, seeking their personal chemical fortune. Sport and comfort accompany them. They bring education for races, for classes, for animals within this vessel, rest and vertigo, in diluvian light, in terrible evenings of study. For in this conversation, in the midst of machines, of blood, of flowers, of fire, of jewels, in busy calculations on this fugitive deck is their stock of studies visible, rolling like dike beyond the hydraulic propulsive road. Monstrous, endlessly illuminating its way, themselves driven into harmonic ecstasy and the heroism of discovery. Amid the most amazing accidents, two youths stand alone upon the ark. Quote, "Can one excuse past savagery and sing upon their watch?" So going back to the Inscription, this is the third thing that's had a huge impact on my life. It's something that I still think about on a regular basis. And it reads like this. Dear Becky, when you are ensconced by darkness, remember that you have the heart and soul of a poet, and at your innermost center, is all of the light you will ever need. That Becky is one lucky motherfucker. Although I feel like one lucky person myself, because through this person who wrote this to her, I'm getting the same golden nugget. It's such a beautiful thing. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever had the pleasure of coming across. The idea that you can be surrounded by darkness and that all of the light you will ever need, everything that you're seeking, it's already inside you. It's already there. You just have to like acknowledge it or wake up to it or realize it. And that you can accomplish anything, get through anything, achieve anything, feel anything. And it's all right there. And the point of this episode isn't to, give these personal examples just because. The point is that here I was walking in Powell's in 2012. This random book that I came across gave me all of these things. Someone at Powell's stocked the shelves. They put it at a certain level where my eyes saw it, or maybe they put it at another level and somebody else took the book, looked at it, thought about, no, put it back at a different spot, changed everything. I mean, what if it was a different book? I would have had a different path. It would have been a different person, maybe. Probably. This goes back to the thing I say about movies. You're a different person walking out of the movie theater. And I think this is true too. And the point of everything here is just to say, all of those interactions that we come across, we tend to only think about the big ones. But I think it's the little ones. It's the tiny, what we perceive of as the tiny interactions, the small interactions, the small moments. Those have everything in them. Just like this, that one moment changed everything for me. So, it's just a matter, I guess, of being aware of that and acknowledging it and pulling threads from those things as much as we can. All of the light already inside you. What more do you want? All right, that's all I have for you this week. You can follow me at Culture Fridays on Twitter, at Pop Culture Fridays on Instagram. The website is thisiswhereyouare.com. Send me a line. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're safe. Lots of things happening in the world today. It was only a matter of time before things bubbled over. It's like we're all having dinner over at Frank Costanza's house. The airing of grievances has begun. Until next week.